Hello everyone, I'm so happy to see you again on my channel. Today, I'd like to share with you a brand new episode, continuing the emotional story of the single mother lythica and the policeman Hung. In the previous episode, during the bustling days of the Lunar New Year, Hung finally had the chance to return home after many months of duty far away. The three of them, Hung, Hoai, and little Tony, gathered together in the warm atmosphere of reunion, strolling through the lively spring market, enjoying rustic street food, and admiring the vibrant stalls. That moment when they stood side by side under the sparkling fireworks etched deeply into their hearts a happiness that was simple, yet priceless. For the first time, Tony truly felt what it meant to have a home, while Hoai's heart was warmed, her loneliness and hardships finally soothed. But their journey did not stop there. In today's episode, an unexpected twist will arrive, an event that may seem small, yet has the power to completely change the rhythm of this little family's daily life. The laughter may continue with new joys, or it may be replaced by worry and difficult decisions. Will Hoai have the courage to face the challenges ahead? Will Hung, with the heavy responsibility of a policeman, be able to fulfill his duty to the unit while still protecting the home he cherishes? And Tony, the innocent, pure-hearted boy, how will he feel in the midst of such big changes? Everything still lies ahead. Join me in today's episode to witness new waves of emotions, from surprise and heartbreak to faith and hope. Don't look away, because this could be the turning point that opens a whole new chapter for the small family of Hoai and Hung. The holiday drifted by in the rare peace that Hung and Hoai had long yearned for. The stillness seemed to embrace the whole village too, breathing with the same slow rhythm of life, no noisy car horns, no hurried worries. In the small kitchen, the fragrance of freshly cooked rice mingled with the smoky scent of the wood stove, warming the heart in the simplest way. In the morning, the little family gathered around a modest meal. On the tray were only a bowl of bright green vegetable soup, a plate of golden, fragrant fried eggs, and a little salty sour pickled vegetables. The food was plain, yet under their loving gazes, it became the best feast in the world. For Hung, after countless days of hurried boxed meals at the station, sitting now with his wife and child, every bite overflowed with love. Tony, still too young to say much, babbled a few pure sounds like innocent notes falling onto the dining table. He gleefully tapped his tiny hands against his bowl, scattering rice grains, spilling soup across the wooden surface. But instead of scolding, both Hung and Hoai burst into laughter. That laughter was so clear it washed away all fatigue, brightening the house with the glow of a peaceful morning. After the meal, Hung rolled up his sleeves and joined Hoai in the back garden. It was a plot she had tended daily on her own, yet still looked untidy, weeds spreading wildly, hardened soil in patches, and young seedlings just sprouting, their roots still fragile. Hung gripped the hoe, striking hard into the stubborn earth. Each thud rang solid, dirt scattering as sweat trickled down his forehead and along his rugged cheek. Yet a faint smile lingered on his lips as he said, "Let me handle this spot, the ground is too tough. If you try, you'll only wear yourself out." Standing nearby, her long hair stirring in the breeze, Hoai gently lifted a cloth to wipe the sweat from his brow. Her voice, soft yet full of affection, replied, "I'm used to it, but with you here, everything suddenly feels so much lighter." Hung only smiled, but inside, a wave of emotion rose. All the hardship of his service seemed to dissolve, leaving only the certainty that being with this woman made even the greatest challenges feel small. Together they pulled weeds, loosened soil, and planted bamboo stakes for the vines. The sound of the hoe, the roots being tugged from the earth, and the rustle of the wind blended into a rustic countryside melody. Tony toddled around, crouching to play with the soil, then proudly running to his mother with a fistful of weeds. His little hands were caked in dirt, his sweaty face shining with innocent joy. Watching him, Hoai felt a swell of emotion. She handed Tony a small plastic bucket, half teasing, half earnest. "Here you go, my boy. Help Mama and Papa water the plants." Tony nodded eagerly, wobbling toward the well. With all his strength, he scooped a little water and rushed to pour it over the tender seedlings. The water splashed everywhere, soaking the soil and his clothes, but his bright laughter rang out so purely that Hung and Hoai couldn't help but laugh along. Hung paused, leaning on the hoe, watching mother and son. His gaze softened, and in his chest rose a feeling beyond words, a simple, peaceful happiness so precious that it made every sacrifice worth it. By the time the sun rose high, the garden was neat and orderly. The vegetable rows stood straight, the new vine trellis sturdy, dew still sparkling on the leaves beneath the sunlight. Tony's laughter continued echoing through the yard, as if sweeping away the last remnants of sorrow. Hoai rested on the porch, fanning herself gently, her tender eyes following Hung as he adjusted the final bamboo stakes. In that moment, she thought to herself, if only days of peace like this could last forever, then every struggle would be worth it. At noon, when the sun grew harsh, Hung set about fixing an old bamboo screen to make shade for the newly built vegetable trellis. The panels were crooked and eaten by termites in places, yet under his firm hands they were quickly aligned, forming a simple but sturdy shelter. Meanwhile, Hoai sat on the porch, rinsing a basket of fresh greens she had just picked. The trickling sound of water from the wooden scoop blended with birdsong from the tall mango tree in the yard, creating a rustic, peaceful village melody. In that quiet moment, Hung often paused, silently gazing at the woman before him, her weathered hands marked by toil, her figure tireless, yet her eyes always gleaming with joy, bright as the early spring sunlight. He thought to himself, as long as we're together, even hardship becomes happiness. The smile at the corner of Hoai's lips, Tony's cheerful giggles, and the serene home around them, all of it formed the family portrait Hung had long dreamed of after so many years of storms. After a simple lunch of vegetable soup, braised fish, and salted eggplant, the family rested. Tony, full and drowsy, fell asleep in his mother's arms, while Hung stretched out on the hammock in the porch, listening to the rustle of leaves in the breeze and the faint scent of young rice drifting in from distant fields. That short nap in the middle of the day, so simple, felt like a rare luxury he had seldom known. By afternoon, with the garden work done, the three strolled together through the village fields. The early spring air was cool, the breeze sweeping over the green rice paddies, carrying the damp scent of earth and a raw freshness. Tony chirped like a little bird, toddling ahead on small legs, babbling sounds of delight, sometimes laughing, sometimes calling out to his parents in broken syllables. The sight made Hung and Hoai smile, their eyes following him with indescribable pride. They walked slowly behind, their hands brushing lightly, their glances quiet yet warm, as if engraving each rare moment deep into memory. Standing in the middle of the wide-open fields, it felt as if the three of them were far removed from the outside world, left with nothing but a small family, a simple love, and a home to belong to. As the golden light of sunset spread across the fields, they made their way back. On the path, Hoai carried a tired Tony in her arms, while Hung walked beside them, holding a basket of greens and a few sweet potatoes freshly dug from the garden. Their shadows stretched long across the winding village road, blending with the evening glow, turning the scene into something almost poetic. By nightfall, the little house was lit by an oil lamp. Hoai busied herself by the stove, cooking a fragrant pot of chicken porridge. Tony, now awake, rubbed his eyes before running into the yard, nestling into Hung's lap as he whittled a new handle for the hoe. Father and son chattered and laughed together, the child's voice echoing through the house, dissolving every trace of weariness. Dinner was humble, but filled with laughter, with trusting glances, and with warmth spreading in every corner. Later, when Tony was fast asleep, Hung and Hoai sat side by side on the porch, sipping hot tea. Outside, the spring breeze drifted past, carrying the faint scent of grapefruit blossoms. Words weren't needed, only a quiet tightening of hands. And in that silence, both understood, true happiness is often contained in the simplest things. On the second afternoon of the holiday, while busy preparing dinner, Hoai suddenly felt dizzy. The world around her swayed, and a wave of nausea surged up, forcing her to grip the edge of the wooden table for support. Her lips turned pale, her face visibly drained of color. Just as Hung stepped in from the yard, the sight alarmed him. "What's wrong? Are you in pain anywhere?" Hoai forced a smile, trying to brush away the worry in his eyes. "It's nothing, maybe I'm just tired from walking around the market this morning." But inside, her heart was racing irregularly. Hung still frowned with concern, but not wanting to pressure her further, he gently helped his wife sit down and quietly took over the cooking himself. That night, when Tony had fallen fast asleep, Hoai lay awake beside him. The steady sound of her child's breathing calmed her, yet in her mind one suspicion grew clearer and clearer. Could it be that she was pregnant? The thought made her whole body tremble. A spark of happiness rose within her, glowing warmly in her heart, but along with it came a heavy weight of fear. If this was true, was it time to tell Hung? Or should she keep it to herself, so he wouldn't be distracted from his duty? The next morning, while Hung took Tony to play in the garden, Hoai quietly slipped out to the market. She stopped by a small pharmacy at the end of an alley, lowering her voice as she asked. The shopkeeper barely looked up, simply handed her a test kit wrapped in a brown paper bag. Hoai whispered thanks and quickly tucked it into her pocket, her eyes darting nervously around as though afraid of being seen. The entire day felt like sitting on hot coals. Each time her hand brushed the fabric of her pocket, her heart pounded violently. She still smiled at Hung and Tony, but a faint shadow of unease lingered in her eyes. Hung, oblivious, only assumed his wife was tired and needed more rest. Late at night, when the household was asleep, Hoai finally slipped out of bed. She stepped into the small bathroom, the weak yellow light casting a faint glow over her anxious face. The drip of water from an old faucet deepened the tension in the air. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped the brown paper and pulled out the test. Every movement was slow, heavy with breathless anticipation. She shut her eyes tightly, whispered a silent prayer, and let out a long exhale. A few minutes later, she opened them, her hands clenched so hard they turned white. On the test strip, 2 bright red lines appeared, undeniable and clear. Hoai froze. Her lips moved soundlessly, her eyes welling up with tears that rolled down her cheeks. A part of her heart burst with boundless joy, for this little life was proof of her love with Hung. Yet another part sank under the weight of fear, her mind swarmed with questions. What should I do? Should I tell Hung right away? Or wait until he's less burdened? If others find out, will they accept our love? That night, Hoai sat for a long time beside the flickering oil lamp. Outside, crickets chirped and the wind howled through the cracks, echoing the frantic beats of her heart. She gently placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "My child, I must be stronger now, because I am no longer living just for myself." Throughout the 3-day holiday, Hung stayed home, wrapped up in the warmth of Hoai and Tony. To most, it was just a brief stretch of time. But for Hoai, every passing hour felt heavy with a secret she dared not speak. Each time she saw Hung holding Tony in his strong arms, rocking him gently with every step, the boy's pure laughter blending with the deep, steady voice of his father, the sound of happiness filled the garden, drifting into every leaf and every breeze. From a distance, Hoai watched, her heart trembling with each beat, stirred by emotion, yet aching because she could not fully share in that joy. Many times her eyes brimmed with tears, but each time Hung turned toward her, she hurriedly wiped them away, hiding behind a calm smile. When Hung sat under the porch, patiently stacking wooden blocks for Tony, his voice gentle like a teacher guiding a student, Hoai quietly sat beside him. Her gaze overflowed with love as she followed their every movement. Yet behind that gaze lay unspoken feelings. She longed to shout out the good news, to see his face light up with joy when he heard the words, "You're going to be a father again." But her lips pressed tightly together, her throat choked, unable to utter a single sound. In her mind, countless fears surged, fear that if he knew, Hung would be distracted, fear that he wouldn't be able to devote himself fully to his duty. Their love had already weathered so many storms, would it have the strength to withstand another, now that a new life was entering the world? At night, when Hung and Tony drifted into deep sleep, the room was lit only by the faint glow of the oil lamp. Hoai turned her back toward them, eyes wide open, staring into the darkness. The wind slipped through the cracks of the door, rustling the fabric curtain, mingling with the steady breathing of father and son beside her. She gently placed her hand on her belly, feeling the trembling within. A strange, radiant happiness spread through her, but along with it came a crushing anxiety she had no one to share with. In the old wooden cabinet in the corner lay the pregnancy test, 2 unmistakable lines. Hoai had carefully wrapped it in white paper and hidden it away, as though a single glance from someone else would expose her secret. Each time her eyes happened to flicker toward the cabinet, her heart clenched. That tiny object was proof of a miracle growing inside her, but also the burden of a truth she alone carried. There were moments when, overwhelmed, she opened the cabinet, her hand trembling as she reached for the test, intending to place it in Hung's hands and tell him everything. But just as her fingers brushed the edge of the paper, she pulled back, collapsing into a crouch with her face buried in her palms. A faint, forced smile crossed her lips, as if to reassure herself, not yet, he must stay strong on the path he's walking. The short holiday slipped by. For Hung, it was perhaps a rare pocket of peace with his family. But for Hoai, it was an eternity of inner conflict. Every hug, every glance, every shared meal made her yearn to speak the secret aloud, yet in the end, she chose silence. Inside her, the truth burned both like a warm flame that comforted her heart, and like a heavy stone pressing on her chest, leaving her awake through countless nights, eyes wet with tears she could not explain. The morning Hung shouldered his backpack and returned to his unit. The sky itself seemed draped in a wistful gray. The distant crow of a rooster, the crunch of wheels on the dirt road, every sound carried the weight of parting. Hoai rose early, quietly preparing him a simple breakfast, a bowl of hot noodles, a few slices of fried egg, while trying to hide her swollen eyes after a sleepless night. At the village gate, Hoai held Tony tightly in her arms. The boy looked at his father with wide, innocent eyes, sensing something unusual. Hung bent down, kissed his son's forehead, and clasped Hoai's hand one last time. The strained smile on his lips could not mask the heaviness of farewell. "Take care of yourself, and look after our boy. I'll try to come home soon," he said, his deep voice quivering ever so slightly. The spring wind blew through, carrying moisture and scattering pink paper blossoms that spun and drifted along the narrow village path. Hung's figure, with his soldier's backpack, gradually disappeared behind the bamboo grove at the lane's end. Hoai stood frozen, her hand gripping the hem of her blouse so tightly the fabric wrinkled. Her gaze clung to his fading silhouette until it shrank into nothing but a speck on the horizon. Her chest tightened, her lips pressed shut, aching to call out, aching to run after him and tell him the truth she was hiding. But her feet refused to move, bound by an invisible thread. Inside her pocket, the pregnancy test with its 2 red lines lay still. It was proof of the miracle quietly forming inside her, and the heavy secret that made her heartbeat stumble. She placed her hand over her chest and whispered silently, "Stay strong, my love. I'll keep this secret, at least until the right moment comes." Tony tugged gently at her shoulder, his innocent eyes still staring down the road where his father had gone, his lips fumbling over half-formed words. Through her tears, Hoai smiled and held him close, whispering, "One day, you'll understand, your father is the strongest pillar for both of us." On the quiet village road, the spring breeze lingered, blossoms kept falling, and in Hoai's heart, the first waves of a coming storm had already begun to rise. Will Hoai have the courage to reveal the truth she's been hiding from Hung? And if the little life within her truly comes into this world, how will the future of their small family unfold? Will it be days of complete happiness, or a new journey filled with challenges waiting ahead? Let us all wish Hoai strength, so she can make the right decision for herself and for her family. May Hung remain steadfast in his duty, so that when he returns, he can open his arms to embrace all the love, including the unexpected joy that is quietly growing each day. And may Tony, the innocent, pure-hearted little boy, always be nurtured in the boundless love of his parents. What do you think? Will happiness continue to smile on this little family, or will new storms rise once again? Leave your heartfelt blessings and thoughts for Hoai, Hung, and little Tony in the comments below. And don't forget, tomorrow's episode will be released, where unexpected twists and deeply moving moments await. Stay with us to witness every step of their journey, one filled with tears, but also radiant with faith and hope.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng. Mọi người thân mến, thì như mọi người cũng đã biết thì mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng thì đã ở bên nhau một quãng thời gian rất là dài, và họ còn có một quãng thời gian sống chung với nhau nữa. Và hiện tại thì Hùng đang đi làm xa và chỉ có một mình Hoài Ca ở nhà, và Hùng thì hiện tại thì đang được nghỉ lễ và đang về ở bên Hoài Ca. Còn bây giờ Hoài Ca thì cô đã phát hiện ra một điều, đó là cô có bầu á mọi người. Hiện tại thì mới thử que thì mới biết là có thai thôi, còn lại cũng chưa có siêu âm nên cũng chưa xác định được tuần tuổi của cái thai. Và hiện tại thì cô vẫn đang giấu cái bí mật này đối với Hùng. Còn Hùng thì anh chuẩn bị phải quay lại cơ quan làm việc á, và sau này cũng khá là lâu nữa mới có dịp về. Còn Hoài Ca thì vẫn đang giữ bí mật này. Vậy liệu mọi chuyện sẽ tiếp diễn ra sao? Mời mọi người đón xem ở phần sau nha.